As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICANN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICANN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Good evening, professional colleagues, student members, and friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. And I'm glad to welcome you to the first episode of ICANN on Air in the month of November 2024. And this is your great platform for learning, powered by our noble institute. I'm your host for today, Tosin Akinwumi, FCA. It is ICANN on Air again today, Thursday, 7th November 2024. And we are looking at another topic, just like we had the same topic, the part one of it last week, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector. Last week, you agreed with me that we have the honor and the privilege to guest the Accountant General of Lagos State. And today, we are also bringing in a distinguished professional, a public finance analyst, an amiable budget expert in person of Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning of Ogun State, Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan, FCA. Sit down and relax. You will certainly enjoy the part two of the topic, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector. Don't go away. I'll be right back shortly.
The Skill Up Artisans Program Super is an initiative of the...
In today's interconnected world, complexity is the new normal. An accountant must navigate this landscape, leveraging interdisciplinary approaches to drive sustainable growth. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, USA District, invites you to our 12th ICANN USA International Accountant Conference. Join us for 4 days of inspiring keynotes, interactive sessions, and expert panel sessions. Date is 26th to 31st of August 2025. Theme: Navigating Complexity, Accountants as Catalyst for Interdisciplinary Solutions. Venue is Windham, Indianapolis Airport Hotel, 2544 Executive Drive, Indianapolis, IN 46241. Join the conversation. Shape the future.
All right, if you are just joining us, I have the honor to welcome you to another episode of ICANN on Air. And today we are discussing the part two of the topic, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector. And I have here with me a senior member of our noble institute in person of Honorable Olabimtan Olaolu, FCA. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you in the studio today. You are muted, sir. You are muted, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay. All right. So, very good evening. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the honor and the privilege. And I say good evening to all our professional colleagues out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is the voice and the face of the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning in Ogun State, Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan, FCA, a distinguished professional, a public finance analyst, and amiable budget expert. And of course, let me quickly take an abridged profile of our guest on the show today so that our people can actually know him better. Olaolu is an ambitious professional with leadership and public financial management proficiency and extensive banking experience. He has a robust professional background and reform drive. Olaolu holds both the BSc degree in accounting and MBA in finance from the University of Lagos, and he is a fellow of ICANN, CITN, and Association of Chartered Certified Accountants of the United Kingdom, FCA. He has vast experience in the financial services sector, managing and executing projects, and the ability to solve complex problems, having worked with renowned banks and rising to general management cadre in the banking industry. He was the managing partner CEO of Olaolu Olabimtan and Co., Chartered Accountants and Financial and Business Advisory Associate, and led the practices on a full-time basis from 2009 to 2019. He led the team in serving FRS, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, and Ogun State Internal Revenue Service. The team also provided tax advisory services to several companies. Ladies and gentlemen, and that is the brief profile of our guest on the show today in person of Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan, FCA. Once again, sir, it is our pleasure to have you on the show today. And today, without much ado, last week we considered this topic, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector. And today we are looking at the part 2, the continuation of that topic. And our members are ready to listen and hear from you and learn regarding this same topic. So I will start this way. In the words of Dave Ramsey, who is the CEO of Ramsey Solutions, he said, and I quote, "A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it actually went." And our global audience are thrilled to have a double-edged professional colleague like you on the show today. As someone who has deep knowledge of both the private and the public sector, I would like you to talk to us about budgeting. So what is it and what are the process or methods involved in capital budgeting?
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, you're asking specifically about capital budgeting. So essentially, it's a process by which you evaluate potential large long-term investments and projects. So whatever it is that you want to acquire, it's large, it's long-term. Maybe you want to purchase new machinery, put up a new factory or expand facilities. That's the process by which you would evaluate and decide on what you want to do. Essentially, you want to be sure you are allocating resources in a scientific manner and not just by rule of thumb or political patronage, And so that's what it is. And essentially, there are a few steps. So you identify the different opportunities. You then forecast the cash flows. You want to then evaluate and select whatever investment opportunity you're looking at. Of course, there's a risk assessment and sensitivity analysis. What kind of risks are involved in this? How do we manage this risk and mitigate? And then your sensitivity analysis. After that, you have your approval and implementation. Of course, performance monitoring is very, very critical. So essentially, that's what capital budgeting is. You find out that it may be a bit different when you're in the public sector. because in the private sector, you begin to talk about things like MPV and IRR and profitability index, But in the government, you may not be talking about MPV. You are actually looking at socioeconomic issues, So MPV may be quite, out of the way, even though theory tells us that we've got to do that. But you realize that sometimes you are doing a road because the rate at which people are dying on that road is high. And so it's not a matter of MPV. It's a matter of we people are dying on this road, so we've got to fix it. Sometimes it's a case of it takes 5 hours to commute on a road that should ordinarily take 45 minutes. And so your analysis tells you that if you do that kind of road, you will bring in more business and investors can come in, and then it will have an effect on your economy and your GDP. You agree with me that it's not MPV analysis that will do that. So it's about cost benefit analysis, it's cost effectiveness analysis, and things like that. But theory says we should do all of that is done in the private sector, but you realize that it may not work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our guest on the show. I think the student members who are here should actually take pen and paper because certainly they will also be listening to practical issues as is been seen in the public sector as compared to what we have in the private sector. And unfortunately, we have a guest here who has experience in both fields and who will be just opposing the two positions. Thank you very much for that succinct response. Based on your array of experiences and skills, I'll be asking you to take us through the understanding of the concept of budgetary processes and implementation with a reference to both the public and private sectors.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Budgetary processes and implementation discipline. Like you have introduced me, spent the better part of my career in the private sector. The truth is there is some convergence when it comes to budgetary process and implementation discipline. So for the budgetary process itself to start, you need to do what we call planning and objective setting. The planning must happen. And when we say planning, you don't just go ahead and begin to budget. So usually what will happen, as in a company where you would have your 5-year strategic plan or a 10-year strategic plan, the same way in government, we have, 10-year plan, 30-year plan, which we then break into the medium-term expenditure framework. So that's for a 3-year period. So you cut it down into 3 years. And so it's at that stage that you do what we call planning and objective setting. So you're very clear about where you're going to, clear about how you want to get there, clear about the impacts. Now, a bit of divergence here. For profit-making organizations, you are talking about market share, you are talking about sales and profit before tax. But in government, we will be talking about impacts, just like I tried to explain when I was answering your first question. So it's really about impact, it's about the outcomes, it's about, objectives of government. So having said that, that's the planning and objective setting. The next thing you would go to will be revenue forecasting, or for us, we expand it and we call it inflow forecasting. So it's at that point you are looking at the revenues that can come in. One very important tool we use here is the MTRS. That's the medium-term revenue strategy. So we're looking at all our revenue heads. We're looking at, the revenue base, and thinking, how can we expand this, that kind of thing. Once you are done with that, then you are now looking at the amount of funding you can get from external bodies. Again, there's a methodology to that, again, for me, having worked in banks, I know what a lender is looking for. And so we assess ourselves and we're able to say, okay, revenue, we may get 500. The best we can get in loans will not be more than 300, that kind of thing. Now, when you now finish that revenue forecasting, that's when you now go to resource allocation. Now you are clear. All I can get next year is 800 billion, for instance. And that's when you now begin to do resource allocation. So resource allocation will flow again from your strategic intent. What is really our strategic intent? So we're heavy on infrastructure. So infrastructure gets the largest chunk. And then you're looking at education, you're looking at health. Essentially, where are you going to? And that's what helps you with what we call strategic resource allocation. It's after you've done all that you then begin your budget formulation proper. It is after that the guys in the health team, the guys in infrastructure team, the guys in education team then begin to say, what projects are we going to do? And then they begin to cost it. That's the level of budget formulation. Of course, after that, we have the budget approval. In the private sector, goes through your exco, goes through your board, and is approved. In the public sector, goes through the exco, and then goes through the House of Assembly, and then it turns into an appropriation law. And then, of course, you begin execution. The law is now passed, we just say budget, but for us it's an appropriation law. The law is passed, and then you begin execution. As you go along, you then do monitoring and evaluation, and then you attempt to adjust. Many times, you don't see many state governments going back to adjust their budgets, but that's common at the federal level, where you see them, amending the budgets and bringing extra budgets and all that, but that's not common at the state level. But for a private company, as you move on with the realities that are happening, you then can, adjust your budgets. I hope I've okay, so now let's talk about the implementation. I think you were heavy on implementation. So that's the process. Now, when we talk about implementation discipline, that's a different ball game entirely. Now, so you find out that in the private sector, that the issue with implementation is really not expenditure side, is people not meeting their revenue targets. So I spend the better part of my life in the banks. So you'll see that there's tight control. We're always holding the MPRs. What profit are you making? And then the only time we really watch the cost will be when the profits are not coming in the way it should. Now, in the public sector, you realize that the real issue when we talk about implementation is implementation on the expenditure side. Implementation on the expenditure side. What really happens is that government can be a bit slow because of the financial regulations we must follow and the processes that we follow. So budget implementation, I've come to realize that in the public sector is not as efficient as it is in the private sector, but we keep working on it, we keep trying. So what we do is we do quarterly reports and quarterly evaluations to see how people are running on their budgets, and then we try to find out exactly where the issue is, and then we'll try to correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my Honorable Commissioner. What exactly in particular I'm able to pick from your response is your experience in the private sector mixed with that of public sector. As such, you could speak to these issues in reality. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate you. Moving along, still in this your experience of both private and public sector. Based on your experience so much in the private sector, like you also agree, when you were appointed as the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning for Ogun State, what kind of opportunity did that offer you in person to improve the partnership between the public and private sectors of Ogun State?
Okay, well, thank you very much. For me, I saw it as a very, very unique and valuable opportunity. When you are outside, you have this gap of they don't know what they are doing in the public sector, and you think you can do it better. So when I got in, I realized that they are really not as bad as we think from outside. They're really good people in the public sector, really intelligent, and a lot of our colleagues too are there. But in terms of the partnership, so what part of what we did, by the way, when you talk to me and say as Commissioner for Budget and Planning, I'm part of what we call the economic management team. So I work with people. We have one or two other commissioners in that team. We have the chief economic advisor. So I'm actually the vice chairman of the economic management team. I'm not the chairman. So we work hand in hand. It's a collaborative effort. So what we did, and all of us are coming from private sector. So we work together, and the things we worked on, essentially, we looked at ease of doing business. Where is the ranking of Ogun State in the ease of doing business, and what can we do differently? So it's about creating a conducive environment for investment. We want people to come and live, work, and play in Ogun State. And we looked at it. Ogun State didn't have any public-private partnership law, and Ogun State didn't have any public-private partnership office. And when those two things are missing, investors will shy away from you. They don't want to come, whether local or foreign investors, because what it means is you are doing stuff based on the whims and caprices of whoever is in government. Meaning, if that person leaves government, there may be a problem, And so we worked together, and we were able to sign into law the Ogun State Public-Private Partnership Law. So that puts a structure to engagement with the private sector. And then we set up the Public-Private Partnership Office, and we put in a professional, somebody who understands that business. So that's one aspect. The other thing we did was, again, we didn't have a Bureau of Public Procurement. So procurement in the state wasn't where we thought it should be. So again, we worked on the public procurement law, and then we set up the Bureau of Public Procurement. Essentially, what were we trying to do? Transparency, accountability, ease of doing business, such that people in the private sector will be quite happy to come and invest. Again, we've done a lot of digitization. So our lands process is now digitized. Our tax payments are now digitized, meaning that you can sit in Lagos and pay your taxes and dues or whatever you want online on any day, and then you could sit in Lagos to do your, land application and all that. So again, we were working on improving ease of doing business, working on attracting people. Now, the beauty of this is that if you've been following us in the news, you realize that our revenue keeps going up year on year. Now, these are the things that cause that. Before, we would say you must bring a draft. Now, it means you can only do that Monday to Friday. Today, you can pay us. We collect money 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So just stay in your office or in your house on a Sunday, midnight, anytime. You can do transactions and you can pay. And it also makes it easier. So those are the kind of things we've done. We've also set up what we call economic development clusters, earmarking land and infrastructure for the private sector to come in. Again, if you've been following us in the news, you realize that foreign direct investments has been coming our way in Ogun State. So for me, it's been a unique opportunity, and I'm able to work with the people in the private sector and able to start new things that were never done before in Ogun State. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. These are indeed great development and achievements in Ogun State. And I must say, Ogun State is proud of you, and ICANN is indeed proud of one of theirs. Well done, sir. But now let's talk about project abandonment. Nigerians majorly talk about project abandonment, and it's been largely attributed to budget failure and perhaps corruption, especially in the public sector. What is your personal and professional opinion on this subject?
Okay, thank you very much. Project abandonment, in my mind, may not actually be due to corruption. Note, may not, right? In my mind, what I see that actually causes project abandonment are two things. One, government changes, right? And then there's a new government that is antagonistic to the old government, and then the new government has a total change of direction, or they just decide that they are enemies and they don't want to do the last man's projects. That's one of the things that causes it. You see a place like Lagos where, there has been continuity and they do seamless transitions. You see projects will start and it will end. But so what I'm saying is I'm not really sure it is corruption. Now, so you see the new governor comes in and he says, that's not my project. Then he also wants to do his own legacy projects. Now, so that's what I see, that happens. But our case in Ogun State is different. When this administration came in under Prince Dapo Abiodun, CON, His Excellency, from day one, we said we are going to run a just and equitable government based on good governance. And so we said, it is the commonwealth, it is the money belonging to the people of Ogun State that have been invested in projects that we met on ground. Therefore, we will assess each of those projects and we will decide on how best to go along with those projects. And, for us, I talked about strategic resource allocation earlier on. Now, one of the things we do as we allocate resources, the first priority for us is ongoing projects. That's why you will not find a plethora of abandoned projects in Ogun State. No, you won't. We're looking at them and we say priority ongoing projects. After that, the next level for us is projects that have a revenue potential, so that of course the basket keeps getting bigger. And then we talk about projects that have employment generation potentials. And then we talk about projects that are within our economic development strategy. So that's how we work. We don't believe that projects should be abandoned, you know, and, so for us, I don't think it's corruption really. Another thing is some of those projects may not have been properly thought through. you know I don't want to go into that. We have one or two here that we're still thinking what do we do with them, but we disagree with that model. But for us, it's not politics. It's merely from a professional perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that apt response to the question. For those who are just joining us, we are with Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan FCA, who is the Commissioner for Budget and Planning for Ogun State, and we are discussing the topic, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector. Of course, the part two of that exact topic. So, Honorable, there is this general belief that government is supposed to provide an enabling environment for individuals and corporate citizens to thrive. Of course, like maybe what we earlier called ease of doing business. So to what extent does government consult or carry the private sector along during budgetary process and implementation?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll tell you, we try our best in that space. So here's what we do. When we got in 2019, we realized that Ogun State, in preparing the budget, used to hold one budgetary town hall meeting in Abeokuta, and all the stakeholders will be invited. You can already begin to imagine what will happen. We have people, if you know Ogun State very well, we have Imekwafon, that is quite far from here. We have Ikokia, that is far. We have Ijebu Waterside, that is more than 4 hours from here. And then we have only one hall. So that just tells you that it's not going to be really impactful. And so under His Excellency, we decided that we would expand the town hall meetings. And so today we're doing town hall meetings in 4 divisions. And so we go around the state to those 4 locations. We invite people, and this will include people in the private sector. So we invite professional bodies. We invite NASIMA. We invite Ogun State Chamber of Commerce, the organized private sector, And then we sit down in that town hall meeting. We give a report of stewardship. This is what we've done over the last 12 months. And then we say to them, what would you like to see in the next 12 months, in next year's budget? So we try our best to engage the private sector. We also coming from where I started, saying that one town hall meeting won't cut it. You realize that even as we're doing 4 town hall meetings, you still can't have more than 2,000 persons in the room. That just tells you that we are still not there. And so 2 years ago, we started the online engagement. So right from July, we'll put out questionnaires out there on the internet. And the beauty of the internet is that it's not limited by space or time. So you can be in faraway Germany. You can send us, your input into our budget. And so that's what we've done, considering, preparation of the budget. In terms of budget implementation, again, what we do is at the end of every quarter, we publish our budget performance, and we encourage the organized private sector to check it out. So we carry them along as well as we, do our implementation. So for us, that's the extent of what we do. And our doors are open. They visit us from time to time, to ask us questions, and we are always happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan FCA, for that apt response. Dear professional colleagues, of course, you agree with me that so far so good. We've been enjoying the session with the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning for Ogun State, her own senior colleague in ICANN. And let's quickly go and take a short commercial. Of course, as we have been telling you on ICANN on air, this program, your advert here is affordable. Bring your wares, let us run and let us market for you. And let's quickly go and run some commercials. We'll be right back after this time out. Don't go away.
The Skill Up Artisans Program Super is an initiative of the federal government.
The aim of Super is to upskill Nigerian artisans for better employability. This we are carrying out by collecting the data of Nigeria artisans through massive registration, training, certification, and licensing for better job opportunities both locally and internationally. Super will improve the quality of life of Nigeria artisans. It will improve the quality of work from Nigeria artisans, enhance work and professional ethics from Nigeria artisans, reduce dependency on foreign artisans, and increase foreign exchange through talent export.
Log on to super.itf.gov.ng to register now. Super, upskilling Nigeria artisans for super job.
In today's interconnected world, complexity is the new normal. An accountant must navigate this landscape, leveraging interdisciplinary approaches to drive sustainable growth. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, USA District, invites you to our 12th ICANN USA International Accountant Conference. Join us for 4 days of inspiring keynotes, interactive sessions, and expert panel sessions. Date is 26th to 31st of August 2025. Theme: Navigating Complexity, Accountants as Catalysts for Interdisciplinary Solutions. Venue is Windham, Indianapolis Airport Hotel, 2544 Executive Drive, Indianapolis, IN 46241. Join the conversation. Shape the future.
Yes, welcome back to ICANN on Air. And today we are discussing the topic, budgetary process and implementation in the public sector, part 2. Of course, we have in the house the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning for Ogun State, Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan, FCA, who has been doing justice to the questions so far. And of course, I can see all our participants who have joined us. Some have sent in their questions, and others have been giving so much accolades to our own Honorable, who has actually been dealing so much with that topic. Welcome back from break. Honorable, let's continue from where we stopped before the break, sir. All right, so years back, the practice that we see that most organizations, they wait for the Nigerian government's national budget speech before firming their own up. As an insider, as one in the public sector, what is the practice today? In your personal and professional assessment, how reliant is the government budget pronouncement today?
Thank you very much. Well, in the past, yes, people used to wait, for government's national budget. Even when I got to Ogun State and, I wanted to start working and all that, the general feeling was, no, we have to wait for the federal, we need their MTF to give us direction and all that. And my answer was very simple. You should be able to make your own projections as well. let's face it, it's about planning. Like I said, we have our economic development strategy, we have our 30-year plan. We can sit down and we can make projections. And so you find out that in today's dynamic world, people are waking up to the realities that you just cannot sit down and wait. You've got to do your own planning. If you want to plan effectively for a year that starts on 1st of January, you must begin that work July, August, if you're really serious, because of the processes that are involved. So, in my mind, I think those days are gone, really, where you have to wait. No, you don't have to wait. There's less dependency now because people now realize that they can make their own assumptions too, and they can make their own forecast. By the way, those are the federals who are making forecasts, right? And they are your colleagues. They are my colleagues. We went to the same schools. So what are we talking about? Why do you have to wait for them? I don't wait. I will go ahead and I do what I've got to do. So less dependency, then there's scenario-based planning. If this happens, this is what we will do, this is how it will work, and all that. So you realize that people are evolving, they're changing with the times, getting more dynamic. And then all you do now, don't get me wrong, the government budget is important for you, especially if you are a state and a certain portion of your revenue is going to come from federal allocations, right? But this is what I say. How does even the federal government do it? It's very simple. How much do I think dollar rates will be? How much do I think price of crude will be, right? And the condensates. And we know how it's calculated. And so I can make my assumption. Now, we also know how revenue allocation is done. So I can do all that. Even as a private sector person, it's important to see government budgets because then you will know, oh, government is going to spend on roads, government is going to spend on hospitals, things like that. However, you already know these people who are in government. Even if a new government is coming, they made campaign promises, so you can reasonably make your plans. Now, also remember that our plans are not cast in iron. So once you do that, whenever their own budget comes out or they make their own pronouncements, then you can do your adjustments. Now, how reliable are these government pronouncements? I would tell you pretty much reliable, I must tell you. When it comes to policy, we don't have policy somersaults like we used to have in the past. So I can say policy pronouncements and all that, you can take it to the bank. Now, the place where it begins to get dicey is expenditure. So where government says we're going to spend 100 billion on infrastructure next year, and you do your budget based on that, I'm going to get 20% of that, blah, 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 and they don't spend it, you may have issues. So to that extent, that may not work, it may not be as reliable as it should be, but with the experience, you should already know how it can work out. Now, one thing I see in government is they're always spending. Now, and for you as a contractor, it's really not important whether that money is from 2023 budget or from 2024 budget, right? Your issue is you want to do Lagos Abeokuta Road and you are getting that contract. So for me, one, to answer you, we don't wait anymore, both private and state governments. For those who are dynamic and up and doing, do your analysis, do your assumptions, go ahead with your budget and your plans. When federal government own comes, if you have to rejig, you do that. For the private companies, the same thing. Revenue side, a bit, policy side, you can rely. The expenditure side, a bit dicey, but then I think to a certain extent, with experience, you know what to take out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for that detailed response. Okay, so our time is fast spent and we may need to move a little bit fast now. And let's also move to another segment of this topic, which could be more interesting to accountants based on transparency that we are known for. So the phrase budget padding, as you know, may never leave the lips of Nigerians in a hurry. Please, I would like you to give your own unbiased position. How prevalent is it in the public sector, budget padding?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the first thing to help ourselves is to understand what budget padding is. Because I've heard people use it very loosely and just begin to say that's budget padding, that's budget padding. So in my mind, right, I'll attempt a definition. So budget padding is the deliberate inflation of the estimated budget figures by government officials or departments to include extra funds that exceed the actual needs or costs of the project. Now, the reason I'm talking like this is I remember a particular year, and what was referred to as budget padding was the fact that legislators were inserting projects into the budget. That is not budget padding. Budget padding is when you inflate the budget figures, putting extra funds that exceed the needs or cost of the project. So if the executive decides that we should do 10 roads and the legislative body says it should be 12, that is not padding. Padding comes in when the 10 roads should be 1 trillion and somebody decides to write 1.4 trillion. That's padding. Padding is where we need 10 roads and somebody puts 11 roads with the intent of not doing that 11th road and then diverting the funds. And so that's what padding is. And what it means from this is that padding can happen at any point. It can happen either at the executive side or at the legislative side. To answer whether it is rampant or not, I am not in a position to give a verdict on that. What I know is that padding does not happen in Ogun State. The reason is simple. We have a rigorous process where you would first do your defense at the Ministry of Budget and Planning, and we scrutinize it, and then it goes into the House of Assembly. What we also do is to release what we call official price list. And so if we believe that a bottle of Coke should sell for, say, 100 naira next year, you would really have to justify why you are using 200 naira to cost your own Coke. You understand me? And
Yes.
then the way we also do our budgets, if you remember that the simplest definition of budget is your plans stated in monetary terms. If you remember, when I was talking about the budget process, I talked about the plan first. So what we do is you first start by telling us your plans and articulating your plans. I want to do this, I want to do that, and you'll be telling us about the impacts and the outcomes.
Okay.
It is only after that is cleared that you will cost it. So it's really not feasible for you to put 11, buildings when you need only 10. Right at the point of and that's the point where we do what we call the medium-term sectoral strategy. That's when you talk about the projects, the programs, and then the outputs, the outcomes, and the impact. At that level, we would have drilled it down. Guy, we don't need more than 10 buildings for this. You don't need more than 10 textbooks to do this. It's only after that is sorted that we cost. So for us, I don't think it happens in Ogun State. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so still on that table, alleged budgetary process and implementation failures are mostly associated with the Nigerian public sector. What's your unbiased opinion about this assertion?
Thank you very much. Alleged budgetary process and implementation failures. I'm not sure that budgetary process failures happen in the public sector the way we are talking about it. And I don't think it's rampant. I think everybody goes through the budget pretty much trying to do what is right, except a few people who may have, capacity issues and all that. And the NGF is really trying, trying to bring everybody up to speed. I think the real issue is with implementation. So what happens is that sometimes they get the revenue side wrong. And, once the money doesn't come in, you are not able, to then implement. And that's why, when I was talking about the budget process and what we do, we start from the revenue side and we do a rigorous, deep dive into how much revenue we can get. So what really happens with the implementation, well, maybe right from budget formulation, then really thinking about it, is that they have what I call political figures. So a state that may not be able to get up to 500 billion just for optics is announcing a budget of 500 billion. Of course, that's implementation problem waiting to happen. So when that money now doesn't come in, then they begin to have issues. I've already also talked about how government can be slow. For me on my desk, when we're allocating resources, I just always sit down with my colleagues, especially when you have external bodies involved. When you have an external body like the World Bank involved, it costs an arm and a leg to be able to spend money. Not negative, if you ask me. The only negative thing about it is it takes time. But you have to write for no objection, you have to do an advert and wait for 3 weeks, that kind of thing, which are all good issues for transparency and what have you. So we're not saying we mind. I'm just saying some of those things cause an issue. So when you tell yourself we're going to spend $100 million in this year, but after 90 days, you're only just getting approval for $10 million, you already know that you are going to have an issue. So also, what am I saying? It can be planning and budget formulation challenge. It can be implementation challenge and delay. It can be capacity and resource constraints. Some people just don't have the capacity to do the right thing, And there's also the political side of it. Another thing I would say is that there's a monitoring and evaluation side that may not be very strong, But all of these are things we can work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's quickly go and take an audience question. Fagbolati Mitokbe is asking the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Planning, allowing the budget flow to run concurrently outside 1st January to 31st December of every fiscal year in the government sector before closing out the year in some cases. Is it ideal for probity and accountability in the public space?
Okay, if I hear you correctly, she's saying that she hears that they run 2 years budget concurrently and whether that is good. Well, for me, it is better we don't, but there are situations that arise that necessitates that to happen. You understand me? And so when that happens, we've just got to be careful to do the right thing. That's number one. Number two, we have in our financial regulation, I've told you about our MTEF, that is a 3-year plan. So for the capital side of the budget, that's if you issue a warrant, it is indeed valid for the entirety of that medium term. So if I have a medium term expenditure framework for budget of 2024, 25, 26, if a capital expenditure warrant is issued in 24, I can still pay up to 2026 on it. I've not done anything wrong. The only thing I must not do is to issue a warrant in 24 for that 50 million and issue another warrant in 2025 for the same work at the same 50 million. That will be wrong. That's corruption. However, it can run. That's why I said there are circumstances under which it will run. And for me, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's bad. Should just be careful that we don't do what we call a double dip and we're not spending twice on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question is more like a yes or no question, and it's just for learning's sake, majorly for our student members who are also on this call. Is there or are there any fora that bring commissioners of budgets of the different states, the 36 states and FCT together to discuss budgetary process and implementation? Do we have such in Nigeria?
You have said is yes or no? Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's fine. Now, I think our time is fast spent and we may need to quickly wrap up the show. So, Honorable Commissioner, in closing, ICANN is always open to ideas that would positively advance the growth of our members, the accountancy profession, and the global business environment at large. What is your suggestion to ICANN on how our members can further participate and effectively contribute in budgetary process and implementation in the public sector?
Okay, thank you very much. For me, I think that there's a major thing that we can do. We should get more involved. And let me tell you about my experience in the States. So when we do those budgetary town hall meetings, we actually invite ICANN. But I'll tell you an interesting thing. They don't come. We invite ICANN and they don't come. And I'm like, why is ICANN not part of this? You understand me? Well, let me correct myself. It's only in the Yewa division that the ICANN people come. They don't come in Abeokuta, they don't come in Shagamu, they don't come in Ijebu-Ode. So for me, it is ICANN should make sure they come for such engagements. ICANN should be ready to submit a policy document. You understand me? That's the way. I remember, somebody was commenting at the last conference. Well, that was a side talk that was going on here, that in the days of Akintola Williams, when they say they want to see Mr. President, he would see them. Because when they make pronouncements, people listen. And I'm in my own state, we're inviting ICANN, we are not seeing them. So my own first leg forward is we need to stand up. We need to make our voices heard, And then I also think that, there should be mentorship programs for public sector accountants. I quarrel with the ICANN members that are working with me. I quarrel with them a lot. And my reason is simple. There are some things that they do that simply doesn't follow the strict accounting principles that we were taught. And then I'm asking the guy, excuse me, why would you do this? And then the guy says to me, that's how they told him to do it. And I'm like, okay, so why are you a chartered accountant? If, with all due respect, now you've got to understand, in the civil service, you may not be an ICANN member before you rise to the top. You understand me? So the guy has a boss who is not even a chartered accountant, who is telling him to do the wrong thing. And as a professional, you can't say, excuse me, sir, I think we can do this differently. So mentoring, programs for public sector accountants, advocacy, for them to be placed in, good positions, advocacy for certain positions to actually be the exclusive preserve of accountants. The doctors have been able to achieve that, lawyers have been able to achieve that, engineers have achieved that, but I don't know. We don't have such exclusivity. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. I think this is a case of a member calling on to ICANN to be at the expected place they should be. All your advice, all your challenge has been taken, your charge has been taken, and certainly trust that this will be communicated at the appropriate channel and they will be followed to the latter. Honorable Olaolu Olabimtan FCA, we want to say a very big thank you to you for coming on the show today and for sharing your wealth of experience with our members and the friends of the Institute. Thank you so much for coming, sir. We really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Amen. And we hope that when next we call upon you, you will hearken unto our call, sir.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your promise. Thank you so much. Time is fast spent. Let me quickly take a few announcements before we call it an evening. GA Hub for ICANN's Ultimate Accounting Quiz Challenge. We have an International Accounting Day, and ICANN is inviting you to join an exciting quiz competition with fantastic rewards up for grabs. This competition is open to all ICANN members, professional and actual. Prizes up for grabs. First place, 500,000 naira. The second place, 300,000 naira. And the third place is 200,000 naira. Stay tuned to our social media accounts for more details. The African Congress of Accountants is here again and prepare to join us May 6 to 9, 2025. As accountants from across the continent will be gathering in the vibrant city of Kigali in Rwanda for an unforgettable and memorable experience. Please go ahead and register for that conference. ICANN is live on TikTok. We've been telling you, go ahead and join and follow ICANN on TikTok. Also, the 24th Fellowship Conferment Ceremony will be coming up on Thursday, December 12, 2024. Members who are qualified to join the Senior League of the members of ICANN should go ahead and register for the fellowship conferment. Also, the 74th induction ceremony comes up between December 3rd and 4th, 2024. Members who are in this category, graduate members should go ahead and register for the induction. And dear professional colleagues, global viewers, this is the program for today. Is Worth the While, very educating and highly instructive. Till I come your way again, another topic, and then with another guest on the show. Please stay safe and stay sound. On behalf of the editorial team and the producers, I remain Tosin Akinwumi FCA. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.